Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews. Today we're going to talk about 1992 movie The Fortress by director Stuart Gordon and starring Christopher Lambert. Now, The Fortress is it's a prison movie. It's also an action movie, and it's also one of my guilty pleasures. So, Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for Fortress?
Well, the story for Fortress is Christopher Lambert is like a black beret soldier who is trying to escape into Canada with his wife because they live in a one-child government law America.
Please leave the car open.
Got a positive here. Oh no, it's gotta be Miss Getting
Goddamn breeders. Excuse my language, man. You'd think they'd learn.
They decide to escape to Canada to try and have the child and raise it, obviously. But they're captured, and Christopher Lambert is sent to Fortress, the prison underneath a desert.
Prisoners, your attention, please. You are about to enter the Fortress, a privately owned maximum security prison operated by the Mentel Corporation. The Fortress is located in a secluded desert. No life can survive here. Escape is impossible.
Yeah, it's the Mentel Corporation, so that straight away tells you that this is a corporate prison, and that each prisoner is basically a paycheck to the company.
Yeah.
And the prisoners are there to do the labour work, basically. While
Yeah,
they're there.
expand the prison.
Yeah. So it's safe to say that this is a sci-fi movie. It's set in the future, obviously, where it's been overpopulated, so hence why the birthing laws.
The law is clear. One child per woman. We live on a very small and fragile planet. We must maintain the population balance. Abortion is illegal, and that leaves only one alternative.
From the get-go, you're kind of dealing with what you could consider the innocent being incarcerated wrongfully. I mean, they have broken their universal laws,
Well,
but
you know.
most prison stories will have the hero be innocent, but still have to endure all of these trials and tests of their lives, and basically, in the prison environment.
Yeah, it kind of makes a pretty clear moral distinction in that, the state has created these laws that you can't have a second child, but your main hero and his wife, clearly they love each other, and this child is a product of love, and therefore, you're fully engaged with this couple, and you're fully on their side.
It's Christopher Lambert. He just pulls you into the story.
And it's a very clear. They've obviously locked into this like dystopian, very controlling state idea, and they've got all the imagery of these kind of like faceless, like
soldiers,
black masked soldiers.
Inside. Take all personal belongings with you.
Which, leads us to the processing of the prison.
Yeah, considering 90% of the movie takes place in the prison, they did a very good job of inducting the characters and the audience through the process of going into the prison.
Yeah.
And it is cold and it is brutal.
Welcome to the Fortress. Everything here is the property of the Mentel Corporation, including you. I am prison director Poe.
You've got the dialogue from the screens talking over the top, which is basically the kind of dialogue that we own you now. And it explains that they're taking money, they get so many dollars a day for each prisoner that they have. So, it all locks into the whole commercialised prison industrial complex then.
Kurtwood Smith as the warden.
Yeah,
him just sat there. You are property of the Mentel Corporation now, and you're like.
I'd say that like his performance is the best in the whole film. The warden is the most intimidating, and he's a really good bad guy.
Intestinate Karen Brennick.
Intestination commencement.
You bastard! Zed? I don't think you realize your predicament, Rennick. You have nothing. You have nowhere to hide. You are nothing.
He sat at the top of the prison, and he's got all of his little sisters, all of these automatic AI robots that are extended throughout all of the levels of the prison.
Don't even think about it.
Why? I'm gonna give your boss a report.
He's got his little sisters. He don't need me.
Can enter your mind.
And they're not only incarcerating you physically, but also mentally, and that just adds to all of the sci-fi elements and the excitement of how horrible a position they're really in.
It's a true panopticon prison, which is like a real design concept in real life, where they design prisons so that there are just a few key wardens can keep sight and control over a large amount of people.
The technology of Fortress is top notch. I mean, we're talking laser walls, we're talking like plasma guns that lock onto the intestinate. The intestinators are just a wonder of technology. You know, this tiny little device that gets shot down your throat into your intestines.
Grabs hold of a nerve cluster.
Oh yeah. If you cross the yellow line, it's going to be pain. Cross the red line, it's death.
Automatic behavior control device. Observe all rules. Be especially observant of the yellow and red line. Crossing a yellow line will result in pain. Crossing a red line will result in death.
It's a bit like on Battle Royale, isn't it? You know, that's how they keep them
control.
There,
yeah. But maybe that is a futuristic level of prisoner control. It hints on the possibility of future prisons. Like, what are they actually going to do to keep an overflow of prisoners in line?
But at the same time, you cannot keep Christopher Lambert locked up for long. He is going to find any way to try and escape. He is the hero. You know, he's trying to help everybody. At first he thinks his wife has escaped, but then, spoilers, finds out she's in the prison, so obviously he has to adapt his plans, and then his confrontations with the warden and
some of the other
itself.
inmates.
The other inmates as well, I think, support Christopher Lambert's character very well. I mean, the guy with 187 tattooed on his head.
The acting is quite hammy on some of the roles.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that Christopher Lambert's acting is...
Don't say it, Jeff. Don't say it.
If I'm the most gentle, I would say is perhaps of a classic school. But yeah,
the scenes where he had his mind wiped were, I believed he was mind wiped.
It's because he was drooling.
He was drooling. They were just walking him around.
It's so funny. Why have him spinning around and around and around?
Well,
it's
that's
Sci-Fi.
classic. That device
Whatever
was
they
classic
call those
90s future. You know, we were all going to be spinning around in the future for whatever
Is that
reason.
how-
I think the limitations of some of the special effects that they did to try and show the dream world, I think that's dated really badly. It really reminded me of the Lawnmower Man. For it's the idea of 3D worlds and that kind of thing. But other than those limitations, I think that all of the practical gore effects were fantastic.
Yes.
The intestinators exploding. The gunfire, some of the robotics, and the sets as well. I think all of those practical sets and effects worked really well. There's a couple of green screen issues.
Was there green screen back
like
then?
when they're on the bridge and you can see that it's superimposed behind them just because they're giving that vertigo of the long drop. It didn't look that bad. But I also think that you were right that some of the acting was a little bit subpar. But I think the film did such an excellent job of setting up the heroes and the villains and the atmosphere that once some of the hammy acting came through, you could forgive it because everything else was working so well.
That's it. I think like the storytelling was good enough, and it was varied enough, and it was brought out, like had the breadth of touching enough bases so that you kind of forgot about the acting, and it kind of just brought me back into like a much more traditional like 50s 60s style of filmmaking. And it was almost like somebody had been very much inspired by old movies, and you had these like orchestral classical pieces as you had the drama and the emotional pieces.
Confined to quarters. I've never left these quarters in my entire life.
You are the property of the Mentel Corporation.
I am the director of this institution.
You will please leave Central Control. Crime does not pay.
Which obviously, by today's standards, is quite dated, but it was still quite an effective way of creating drama and getting you to emote along with the characters. And I just kind of lost my kind of criticism of it being that kind of traditional, cheesy kind of what we now know as cliche style of filmmaking. And just got into it and just let it kind of take me along with the story. And the story was interesting enough and varied enough, and the characters developed enough in the film that it was enough to keep me entertained. I
did enjoy the just the dialogue between all the prisoners, especially when they're all in the cell. I mean, that one bit after the 187 guy has been obviously annihilated, shall we just say, and they go and they decide that it's Brennick's bed.
Black fucking beauties. Hey!
This is Brennick's bed now.
Oh yeah? Since when?
Since your friend got blasted by the splatter gun. Dickhead.
There's some actually quite good lines in it. The script writing isn't terrible. In fact, it borderline's good in some areas.
Dickhead.
And you can't watch this film without thinking of Shawshank Redemption, can you? I think that's
Shawshank Redemption.
I think that's
it on like two different levels. We're talking about a Stephen King classic and Christopher Lambert in Fortress.
But obviously there's two massive differences in budget, two massive differences in scene setting and whole filmmaking style. This was about an hour and a half. Of Shawshank Redemption's a 3-hour-long epic. Yeah. But that whole kind of like the whole part which locks you into Shawshank Redemption, which is the storytelling of a guy that overcomes all odds to gain his freedom and to retain his humanity, whilst all the humanity has been lost from the system around him. It's that bit of storytelling that locks you into this film, even though it's a really cheesy sci-fi version of it. It still retains that element to it.
Frame crawls through 24 football fields worth of shit, whereas Christopher Lambert straps on a minigun and blows his way out.
I'm gonna say, I mean,
that's how Shawshank Redemption should have ended.
Andy crawled to freedom through 500 yards of shit-smelling foulness I can't even imagine. Or maybe I just don't want to. 500 yards. That's the length of 5 football fields.
Tunnels and he kills that guy, rips off his gun and starts blasting all those cyborgs all over the place. I am not thinking of Shawshank Redemption. I'm thinking, shit, they're just blasting everything. People getting blown up. People getting intestinated. Shawshank Redemption.
Well, I'll put
they
it
tried
this
to get
way.
through the tunnel, but it's shit.
It's got a tunnel.
Basically, the Fortress does borrow from a lot of prison film and television lore. So you get elements when you're watching this of Oz, the series, or Prisoner Cell Block H, or Bad Girls, or Shawshank, or The Green Mile. Anything prison related. Those tropes of the top dog who's going to charge you rent for being in the cells.
Yeah.
Just all of the varieties of inmates that you get in there to help craft a story. They're not all thugs and,
No,
and
they're
hooligans.
Christopher Lambert. They're the Highlander. He's going to fight his way out and kick the crap out of everybody.
Come on, move. Move!
Favourite scene, Ian?
I like the dream sequence where Christopher Lambert first turns up in the prison.
That's the sex scene, Ian.
Yeah, well, there are quite a few sex scenes in this one, but this is, I mean, he dreams of his wife, and all of a sudden, Kurtwood Smith's voice comes over her body.
This is an unauthorized thought process.
What's the matter, fish? Got a stomach ache? Indigestion, maybe?
Geoff, your favourite scene?
My favourite scene was the part where he's getting brought into the prison, and he gets that intestinator implanted into him, and the whole whole thing there where he's walking through and you get introduced to the prison life and how horrible and like mechanical it is. So yeah, that was my favourite scene, because that was the bit that made it sort of gave you the breadth of the world that he was in, and gave you some of the context, which made it exciting.
You know, the bit where they're actually getting intestinated, for whatever reason, it always reminded me of Total Recall, when Arnie's got the same sort of device coming out of his nostril.
Yeah.
I can't honestly say I have a favourite scene, because the whole movie for me is, like I've said, it's a guilty pleasure. So that's because I love the whole experience. But I think for me the most memorable scene is probably the fight sequence between Christopher Lambert and the 187 guy, and Poe tells the computer to retract the bridge.
Retract the bridge.
And they're still fighting each other, and it turns into that moment where all of the prisoners start shouting in his name, Brannick, So that sequence, and possibly one of the other most memorable scenes, is the removal of the intestinators. Just trying to imagine how that would honestly feel.
Hey, no hurry, no worry.
Stop fooling around. Get the damn thing out of him.
Hey, man, who's fooling around? I can't take this thing. It's stuck. It's stuck. I can't. Come here.
Thank God it's just sci-fi. So
not as painful as Arnie's, though.
No. So would you recommend Fortress, Geoff?
If you haven't seen the film before, I would definitely recommend it. It's not polished. It's a low-budget film with some hammy acting, but it's got all the elements that it needs to go together to make an interesting and entertaining hour and a half.
This is very special.
I wonder why I've never tried this before.
I highly recommend The Fortress as a guilty pleasure. If you haven't experienced it, you should. There's only a few things that I have gripes with it, and that is the convenience of some of the characters in the positions that they are in throughout the film, where you get, the explosive expert gets to work with explosives, the computer expert gets put in the room with the supercomputer. It's some of those things are a bit contrived, but it serves the purpose of the film. It keeps the pace moving at an accelerated rate. There's never a dull moment. There's so many visual things going on, and the story has a heart as well.
No matter what you do, I'll never not love you.
You're real lousy at goodbyes. You know that?
I totally recommend this film. It's a sci-fi classic. Plus, it's got Christopher Lambert in it. It's done.
It's Raiden.
It's Raiden. Raiden escapes from a prison.
Prison's got nothing.
Prison's got nothing.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.